Everybody, we'll go ahead and get started here. Thank you for being here this morning. We will start off with our Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is over this way. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Lulu.
As we gather for this meeting, let us take a moment to reflect on the meaning of place, and in doing so, recognize the various traditional lands on which we do our business today. We wish to acknowledge this land on which this SPC meeting is taking place. For thousands of years, it has been the traditional land of the Hohokam, the Akimel O'odham, and most recently, the Salt River Pima Indian community. Today, this meeting place is still the home to many indigenous people from across Maricopa, and we are grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on this land.
Thank you. Okay, so for this morning, we have our question and answer with Dr. Menzel. If you have questions, fill out one of the index cards and toss it in the basket over here. And then we have a quick report from SBC. Every 2 years, we have to conduct a financial audit. So Sarah Solomon was one of our committee members, and she'll be giving the report on that. And then we have Rachel Clausen here from the organization Save Our Schools Arizona, and she's going to give a pretty quick update on what to expect in the upcoming legislative session that started this week, when we have a longer hour-long meeting that we have planned later for the month. So this is just a preview, and then hope to see you all at that one to get some more detailed information. And then we have Aaron Schur, the SUSD Director of Career and Technical Education, to tell us about the programs available on SUSD. And we have a few executive board updates, and then any representatives, if you have an announcement you would like to make, there's time at the end for that. So we'll get started with Dr. Menzel. Are we sitting, standing?
Good morning. I
Good
can
morning.
stand. Standing's fine.
Okay. All right. Let's see. The district's applied economics projection report shows anticipated 1.5% decline in enrollment, even before COVID, when it was a 3.5% decline during COVID in the report. The district keeps talking about increased enrollment, but how do you anticipate doing this? Applied Economics report even discusses our aging population and fewer family-focused housing growth and increases in other school options.
So, and I think that's a good question. If you assume that there are no changes and we don't do anything to recapture market share, that's the prediction from the demographers. But if in fact we're able to make the case to our families with school-aged children in Scottsdale that this is the first choice for exceptional educational experiences, then the goal is to attract families back, not only throughout our K-12 system, but also to identify families early so that they enroll in preschool and kindergarten and make this their school home. In a school of choice environment, it's not only those that reside within the boundaries of Scottsdale Unified. We have a lot of families that work in Scottsdale. If you were to go over to Tavon, you'll know a lot of the school of choice kids are from families that work in Scottsdale, and it's convenient for them to drop their student off at the school. So in this environment of choice, we need to be able to compete. And so we're looking at strategies, working with Christine Harrington and our marketing team to do just that, to be able to tell our story, promote programs, work with our principals to grow enrollment, and to recapture market share. If you look at the number of school-age students that live within the boundaries of the district versus the number that are enrolled here, we still have roughly 10,000 kids that are not enrolled in Scottsdale as part of our market share just within our boundaries.
Okay, great. Thank you. The sign outside Mojave says, "Be a superhero, wear your mask." When will the district start respecting individuals' mask choices and stop manipulating? Is that really the definition of superhero?
So I think everyone here is aware that for our students, masks are recommended, but they're not required. The health officials, both the CDC, the Arizona Department of Health Services, and Maricopa County Department of Public Health, continue to recommend universal wearing of masks while indoors, when community transmission is substantial or at the high level. So we continue to recommend exactly what the public health officials recommend during the course of a pandemic. We also have an expectation, at least it's my expectation, that we treat people respectfully regardless of the choice that they make. Now, for our staff, we required the wearing of masks, at least during this surge, because we have a challenge with having enough staff in the classroom in order to keep our schools open. And so if we can keep our staff healthy, we can continue to provide in-person learning options for all of our students, which we know is of significant importance.
Okay. What does SUSD do to encourage and support teachers in becoming nationally board certified?
So I think that's a good question, and for a period of time, I don't know how many years, maybe, I don't know, Dr. Sackos or someone who's been here a long time can speak to this, but the SUSD Foundation has provided some funding support for national board certification because it is a rather extensive process. It takes some time. And so there have been some investments made by the foundation. I don't know if the district itself has also invested in NBCT training and certification, but it has been a priority for a number of years.
Yeah, so good morning, everybody. The teaching and learning, part of the teaching and learning team, they actually help teachers navigate the state grants that are out there, state and local grants. First and foremost, then we have the foundation, and then the district has a $50,000 stipend that teachers get every year for the international.
Thank you.
Okay. A large elementary charter nearby has 20% of their students homesick or quarantining this week. Are any of our buildings close to those numbers?
From a percent standpoint, I haven't seen that yet. We last week's numbers, I think one building was at 1.7%. So we do have elevated numbers for sure, and we're continuing to track that. This week, we anticipate being able to roll out a daily dashboard, so you'll see an update every day instead of just once a week in terms of cases, so you can see trends. I would also say that if you look at school-based data in isolation versus what's happening in the larger community, it also might tell a misleading story. So I looked at another school that has a mask requirement, and their numbers in terms of active COVID cases are higher than the numbers that we had in most of our buildings. And so we're continuing to look at all of the data and the evidence and ask those questions.
Last night's board meeting presented ESSER 3 funded projects. One looked like $40,000 for crayons and beads. ESSER 3 was an opportunity to be truly innovative and future-focused to address learning advancements. After COVID interrupted it, where is the innovation?
So there are a number of places for innovation. I don't know if Dr. Guerin, you want to speak to some of the specifics. So that was one example of one need that was submitted by our schools in response to something that they've observed coming back from our COVID experience. That's a pretty small expenditure in the overall scheme of things, and there are a number of innovative things that we have been pursuing, and Dr. Guerin can speak to those.
So it sounds simplistic, but I was a former kindergarten teacher. And what we're finding is some of our youngest learners do not have the fine motor skills that they typically have because they've missed out on pre-K and preschool experiences during 2020 and during COVID. So when they're looking at how to use scissors, how to grasp a pencil correctly, how to learn to start to make their letters, they're behind developmentally. So these are tools to develop fine motor skills recommended by our occupational therapists. So they are proven tools to help bridge that gap so we can help catch the students up. And we're using these kits in all the kindergarten classrooms because we're seeing widespread that this kindergarten teachers are reporting that this is a real concern, and it will delay literacy skills if we don't address it. So even though it sounds like it's just beads and scissors and all of that, they're using it in a way described and recommended by the occupational therapist to close that fine motor skill gap that we're seeing because of COVID.
Can you explain SUSD's process for approving and allowing portable air filters in classrooms? I offered to provide some and was denied by site-level administration because it was not district approved.
So there's a facilities and operations subcommittee of our ICS team in response to the pandemic. And that committee has been reviewing a number of recommendations related to enhanced air filtration systems. As I mentioned at the governing board meeting last night, if you have a la carte systems in every classroom, the district has no ability to support it. And there are oftentimes unintended consequences related to that. And so there are the competing challenges of people who have good intentions, but our inability to support across the board can create some challenges. And so that's why there has to be synergy between the requests that are coming from the classrooms through the building and ultimately to facility services. And that's one of the things that we'll be clarifying at our ICS meeting this afternoon in terms of the process for people making the request and clarity around what can be supported.
Okay. The district is providing free varsity tutoring on Zoom. Are there any plans to provide in-person tutoring?
Dr. Guerin, has that been discussed?
Some of our SUSD teachers are providing before and after school tutoring at the sites in current master proposals. The tutoring for varsity or before and after school for students are at home is to help support students with COVID-like illnesses or home due to COVID. So that's why those are virtual. But also, we understand when students are in school, there's still that learning gap from before that they still need help. So that is happening in many ways.
Okay. How is it determined which high school sports have spectator fees?
That's a really good question, and I would need to get back on the answer because I would need to talk to Nathan Slater and Shannon Crozier on that one.
Thank you. That was my question, so I'll follow up. What parameters are we looking for to allow volunteers back on campus?
So the biggest factor in terms of allowing return of volunteers is the current surge needs to subside. So as we were coming back and looking at all of the factors, it introduces yet another element of potential spread. And I'm hopeful, but again, we'll see over time, if the surge peaks in a week or two like has been predicted, probably 2, and then begins to subside, then we can revisit the question of volunteers. I know that it's important from a classroom perspective. Many teachers rely heavily on their volunteers and support. I know that parents want to be able to support their students learning in that environment. So we would like to be able to return that as soon as practical, but it's really driven right now by the surge numbers.
Okay, thank you. That was my last question. Did anyone have an extra one to add?
So we have differentiated. So if we had, I know an elementary school that had a Be Kind session and visitors that were on campus, but they were able to do things outside. We've allowed those kinds of things to continue. It's the general volunteer, the volunteer in the classroom. If we were doing, I'm trying to remember, I think there was an outdoor hike that was planned and we needed supervision for safety. So if there's a safety component, then we've been able to allow those volunteers to participate outdoors. If they were volunteers providing support for nutrition services, because we've struggled with maintaining staff, we've allowed that to continue because it's an essential function of the school. So we've kind of had a nuanced approach. We've closed out the general volunteer in the school, but for specific purposes, for safety, staff shortages, those kinds of things, we have allowed it. And outdoor, we've also considered those things.
Okay, great. Thank you so much again for your time.
Thank you all. I appreciate it.
Get a round of applause. Okay, and then next up, we have Sarah Solom is going to talk to us about the Audit Committee. I don't know if I should.
Perfect. Hi, good morning, everyone. I feel like I don't know where to stand with this poll. All right, so I just want to present to you the audit that we conducted for SPC. It was from years 2018 to kind of like current, so 2021. And SPC is required to do an audit of their finances every 2 years. So it was a committee of myself, Jill Duncan, Deborah Tate, and Emmy served as kind of like our resource to understand certain transactions and purchases. So she was a great resource to add to the team. So the next audit will be in the fall of 2023. A little bit of the background on how we went about the audit. We were given access to all the transaction reports, all of the monthly treasurer reports, as well as all of the bank statements over these years. And we kind of divvied them out on academic year, and so that way each one of us could look at every single transaction and reconcile it with our accounts. So there are a lot of words on this page, but it's just to kind of give you an idea of what is in the official report that I believe Emmy will post on the website. So this gives you an idea of what transactions were happening, and so it's the beginning balance, the ending balance, and then the change of balance. So the organization has been in the black for a couple of years. There was 1 year in there of the fiscal year 2019 that we actually ran at a little bit of a deficit. Something to take note there, that was actually the year that the organization applied to become a 501c3. So there were some additional expenses in that year, but it was something to take note of that we needed to make sure that we were being fiscally responsible in order to not have that being a recurring theme. So if you want to dive into any more of the exact numbers, like Emmy said, this is on the website. All right, so really what it comes down to is we were able to reconcile almost all of the transactions from each year. So to kind of give you an idea that first year that we looked at, 18-19, was actually a little bit more difficult. And one is because of consistency. So that was a theme throughout that we wanted to make a recommendation on, that we need to be consistent and to be transparent. So in that first year, so kind of going back 3 years almost, to that 18-19, we didn't have a lot of transaction reports. We couldn't reconcile most of the transactions. It didn't look like anything was really wrong. It was just, it wasn't clear and documented well. So then we went on to the next year, which was going to be that 2019-2020 year, and that was much more clearly documented. It was very transparent. However, there was no consistency between any of the years on the treasurer's report, or what kind of, programs that the organization was using. So we've gone through a significant number of payment options. So there was Neon and PayPal and check and online and cash and different kinds of donations or payments that were coming in from our schools or donations or individual memberships. And then going out, there was different ways that we were paying out accounts as well. PayPal, card, check, and different things. So making sure that we're consistent in the types of accounts that we're managing, consistency in the way that we're reporting it, in the sense of having a treasurer's report that's not just unique to that 1 year, but is consistent over the years, and that way we can really make sure that we're tracking all of the expenses and income. In addition to consistency there, again, like I said, that's going to be a theme of our recommendations. It was difficult to find some of the transactions because they were named different things in the treasurer's report, in the budget, and then if you went online onto the bank account, it was obviously charged maybe as something different. So to figure out where all of those pieces fit together and matching up those transactions was something that was a challenge, and our recommendation there would be to make sure that whatever is in the budget or on a line item of an expense, it needs to match or have some sort of detail in there to ensure that someone can go back and trace every single expense or purchase or donation, and there's a lot of clarity there. So whatever language we're using, we just need to make sure it's happening all the time. So one of those examples would be, are they membership dues? Are they membership donations? Are they school fees? So what does that look like? And make sure that it's consistent all the way through. Another point on that, to be detailed, there are some expenses that say something like outreach or promotion. And so making sure that that was understood, that that was a print material, or it was actually a donation to a school for an event, and that was the outreach. But not having that detail within the reports didn't really feel like that was being honest and accurate. That just happened a few times, but we wanted to make sure that it's very clear going forward. So I talked about then the language and providing details for the transactions to easily tie it back to the statements. And also, which we've done, which is something to give us credit for, we've eliminated some of the sources of deposits of donations and ways that we're collecting money and ways that we're paying money. So that has been something that's already kind of been fixed. Another item is there's a lot of reoccurring costs with the programs that we use to manage money or website development, and that's definitely been looked at and readjusted now that we're using MoneyMinder instead of, QuickBooks before, to just be cognizant of our expenses and not just continue to go forward and pay things that didn't need to be really a part of the organization. So I think that pretty much covers it. Does anyone have any specific questions? Great. Well, we were happy to conduct this audit, and hopefully moving forward, the recommendations can go into effect and we can continue to have a great organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you to Jill and Deb as well for serving on that. It was a good experience. I'll go back just a little bit to show. So here's on our website, the About and Board Docs. This whole report is posted there for everyone to take a look. And next up, we have Rachel Clausen with the organization Save Our Schools Arizona, and she's going to give us a preview of the legislative session that just started this week.
Hi, everyone. Just to introduce myself a little bit, I'm Rachel Clausen. I'm an Arizona native. I grew up in Arizona Public Schools. I graduated from Tempe Public Schools and went to ASU, got my teaching and master's in secondary education. My actual very first internship was here in Scottsdale at Cocopah Middle School. That was over a decade ago. So I was trying real hard to remember the teacher I interned with, and I was like, I cannot remember her name. But it's a pleasure to be here. I taught for 6 years in Tempe Union High School District. I was a social studies teacher. I taught for about 6 years, and then I had my third child right at the beginning of the pandemic and decided to step away for a little bit, and now function as the East Valley coordinator for Save Our Schools Arizona. So we'll just go a little bit into this presentation. My dear friend Raquel, she is the Phoenix area coordinator, will be coming back in a week or so to discuss this more in depth. But if you're unfamiliar with Save Our Schools, we are a nonpartisan, community-based organization fighting to support our public schools here in the state of Arizona. And the one piece of legislative preview that I wanted to discuss is the constitutional spending cap. There's already been some news coming out about what this is. It's not a very exciting piece of education policy, but it is absolutely crucial. In the 1980s, the voters had approved the constitutional spending cap, essentially putting a limit on the amount of money the state of Arizona could spend on education. And as a result of no fault of the districts, money was allocated to the districts, but because of increased costs of what it takes to run schools these days, our schools provide a lot more services than they used to in the 1980s. As a result of all of that, we are now set to go over that cap. And what that means is if we do not override that limit by March 1st, districts across the state of Arizona will have to make cuts as early as April, which means that the fourth quarter of this school year, school districts will have to go to extreme measures to cut nearly $1.2 billion from Arizona schools this year. Now, the state has put out what that means for school districts. In Scottsdale, that means over $27 million would be cut by April. So that's substantial. And it is requisite that in order for us to do anything about this, the state legislature must agree by a 2/3 vote to override this limit. They do not need the governor's signature on this. This is strictly the legislature having to take action on this in order for it to get it done. So obviously that does mean we need bipartisan support, which there has been discussion about from both parties saying that we do absolutely need to do this. But it's still a little bit scary as the session just did start on Monday. We definitely need to do this, and we need to do this fast in order to save millions of dollars for Scottsdale, as well as over $1 billion for public schools in the state of Arizona. I will note that because this limit was set in 1980, charter schools did not exist, so charter school funding would not face any sorts of cuts. This is cuts that would only face public schools in the state of Arizona. So I know that was sort of a lot in just a couple of minutes. Raquel will be back in a week or so. What we recommend you do in regards to the spending limit, as well as other bills that are returning, there's a number of things that we recommend to save our schools. You can join one of our community action teams. I actually have a sign up here, which I guess I'll put over there maybe. If you'd like to be on our email list, coordinator Raquel, we send out regular emails saying this is what's happening in the legislative session. This is what you can do to advocate. You can follow Save Our Schools Arizona on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have more webinars that are coming out and other events. And then certainly you can donate if you feel inclined to do so. So we will have more very specific calls to action as we move throughout the legislature. Right now, just being really early in the legislature, we're really only just starting to hear of bills getting sort of start the process in the legislative session. We did have a representative yesterday who said that she will be submitting some bills to address this. So we're hopeful, but know that we need to act quickly if we are going to save our public schools these millions of dollars. So Emmy included this slide for me. If you would like to email or call your legislator, she included it here, which legislative district, if you're not quite sure where you are. And then the representatives and senators that are associated with that district, calling them, emailing them, saying it is crucial that we override this expenditure limit. I do not want Scottsdale schools to face cuts. And as far as those cuts go, school districts are already discussing what that potentially may look like. So there was a news article that came out in which a Gilbert Public Schools administrator discussed what that could possibly mean. And they said that one possible response would be, in order to cut transportation costs, switching to a virtual setting, having to furlough staff, possibly having to cut teacher salaries that last several weeks of the school year. So in order to deal with those funding cuts, districts will have to take some pretty drastic measures. This isn't just, getting rid of some, in my opinion, we don't necessarily have excess to cut from our schools, but these are pretty significant resources that we would have to be without the last month or two. So can I take any questions? Emmy? Yes. Yes. Correct. The districts will not be allowed to send it. Yes. And this is not new money. Prop 208 funds have not even begun to be collected. So this is not that. There are a number of reasons we've hit this limit. As I mentioned, schools, we provide more resources than we did before, or services we did before. There's also some other complications. Prop 301 dollars for a period of time. The limit did not apply to them, but when Prop 301 was extended, the courts decided in 2018, I believe it was, that in fact Prop 301 dollars does apply to the spending limit, and so we have that money that now counts towards it. So there's a number of reasons. We also have the fact that we've had this sort of drastic fluctuation in enrollment in public schools, and so there's several reasons for that. Yes. Yeah.
Everyone is on YouTube complains that they can't hear.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate your advocacy for Scottsdale Unified School District, and welcome back, Rachel. So my name is Libby Hart-Wells. I'm a parent here in SUSD, and I'm also a governing board member. As Rachel indicated, this is very policy wonky, what has transpired. In the 2018 decision that the legislature continued the classroom site fund, the 301 was what she was referring to as Prop 301 dollars, was a good thing, and it wasn't clear, and it was a bipartisan effort. It wasn't clear at the time that it was intended to not have the 301 dollars be exempted any further from the cap. So this sunset of the exemption of those dollars, which all the district public schools are in the same boat on this, it wasn't clear that was intended. So this is not necessarily some ill-intended event. What's happened is a technicality, and it's happened at one of the worst times because we're still navigating this pandemic. So I urge you to reach out to your representatives in the state legislature. This is fixable. That's the good news. This is fixable. But I want to give you a very easy example to understand what's happened here. I give you $100 in August, and because you ask for $100, and you tell me what you're going to use it for, I'm like, sure, here's your $100. You don't spend the $100, you spend some of the $100. Let's say you spend $25, $30, $50. And then come January 1st or March 1st, I tell you, wait a minute, you can't spend the whole $100 anymore. In fact, you can only spend the $75. And if you do spend the $25 that I just told you can no longer spend, we're going to penalize you. And that's not fair, right? The good news is this is fixable. So we can do this. So I would encourage you to use your voice. As a parent, you're obviously interested in it as an advocate for the school district, or you wouldn't be participating this morning. So I encourage you to share this information. Again, it's not that it was ill-intended. It's a circumstance, it's a technicality, it's a very policy wonky thing, but it's a fixable policy wonky thing. So thanks again for being here, and thanks for giving me a minute just to share that example.
No, I appreciate that very much, and it absolutely is fixable, but it definitely needs to be fixed. Yeah. Well, I think there has been, several months ago, Senate President Fan had come out and said that she was supportive of it. Various legislators have said they support it. There are some legislators who say they will support it under certain conditions, that there are certain things that they would like essentially to be done first before we go to extend the limit. So there's definitely some politics at play. And so that's why it's so crucial that we express to legislators that put politics aside, this is about our kids, and we need this to be done now. Yeah. No. No. Yes. So I know that there was one representative the other day who had expressed wanting to have an increased expansion of vouchers before allowing for the extension of the expenditure. And, you know, it really is some of those politics of, you know, I'll do it as long as we can get something else. And so, but as you say, it seems very obvious, right? And so, which is why we need to express to our legislators, certainly a lot of them know we just need to get this done. There are a number of different ways that they could do this. This isn't just necessarily, there's like a one only kind of fix, that there are a couple of different kinds of fixes that they could do this. They could do this as a one-time thing, or they could do this as a longer term, let's not have to deal with this again in some future years. And so there's some discussion as to, well, can we just get this done and then we'll deal with it in the future, or should we address this for the long term? Yeah. I was going to say.
Thank you. So thank you for the question. Let me clarify. So last night's discussion, what I understand your question to be, was there was discussion about the impact of this cap not getting waived, because right now the cap is in place. And right now, the district public schools are all on course, of course, to exceed the cap, because the budgets were never developed with the expectation that the expenditure cap was lower than the budget cap, so that delta. So the comment I believe that you're referring to was, well, we can't really anticipate what's going to happen next year because we have to do this each year. This meaning you have to make a new fiscal year budget each year, because the state legislature allocates on a yearly basis. And I think that is what you're referring to. So that's a little different, and that's true, and that won't change even if this fix is made. And I would argue that both fixes need to happen, not just a short-term fix, but a constitutional change, which it will require a change in the Constitution, but a good change. Again, we're not living in 1980, right? This, again, I think it was unintended. I believe that, and I also believe it's fixable. We have the power to fix it. So thanks for your question.
Absolutely. Thank you for that explanation there. And that's Save Our Schools. We would like a long-term fix as well. Doing this now and then attempting to do this again in the future, it just takes away from the real work that we need to be doing to help public schools improve in the state of Arizona. And so that's what I would suggest that we do. I mean, we're all here because we love our public schools, and we certainly don't want to see any additional harm come to them, especially as we know how difficult the last year and a half or so has been for our kids and for our teachers and staff. And so let's sort of just work together to be able to encourage our legislators to do this so that we can finish the year out strong and not come out of this hurting even more.
Thank you so much, Rachel. And if you leave that, I can email it to you. So, perfect. Okay. And up next, we have Erin Schur. She is the SUSD Director of our Career and Technical Education Programs.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here this morning. I'm Erin Scher. I am the Director of Career and Technical Education for Scottsdale. Starting my third year here, or in my third year, I guess we're halfway through. Sometimes I get that pandemic brain a little bit. I started my career as a CTE teacher. I then moved into being a counselor before moving into site and then ultimately district administration. So I've seen CTE go through a lot of changes and developments, and I'm excited to share with you where we are today. First, just want to share this image of what our CTE programs look like. I think a lot of times I have memories of, taking a woodshop class or a cooking class, and although those are fond memories, they were kind of one semester, maybe a quarter class that I had an exposure to. That's not who we are anymore. CTE is high tech, in demand. We want high wage. We're business, we're healthcare, we're engineering, we're information technology, and we are 2-year programs. So we are no longer those singleton, one semester cooking classes that we maybe experienced when we went to high school. So just want to share a little bit about the elements of our CTE programs. CTE does begin in our high schools, is where we are funded, open to students in grades 10 through 12, with having a few options for students in 9th grade. And a lot of times that 10th grade does become a question of why can't I get started in 10th grade or in 9th grade as soon as I enter the high school? It has to do with our funding. We do receive special funding for CTE from our federal government, our state government, and then our students do generate the ADM for our local funding as well. And part of that, starting in 10th grade, as you will see as I describe kind of those elements of our programs, a lot of our programs do have dual enrollment, which we typically encourage students to do as juniors or seniors. In some cases, they can take advantage of dual enrollment in 9th and 10th, but that's just starting to open up. The other piece is industry credentials, which I will also go into more detail. So a lot of times students have to be at a certain age to be able to take credential exams. So if they would begin in 9th grade, that year 2 would be 10th grade, they wouldn't be eligible to take the exam, or the exam would expire, the certification would expire before they can actually go out and use that. So there are some definite reasons why we keep that to those older or upper grade levels in high school. As I mentioned, we are now 2-year programs. We do encourage our students to begin in 10th or 11th grade and then complete by 11th or 12th grade. In some cases, we do have classes that are 2 periods a day. They're a block class, so students can get the full sequence, the full program in 1 year. As I mentioned, our programs do lead to in-demand, high-wage jobs. We have a list of programs that comes from ADE. They look at our workforce data. They are working with our state and our local leaders to really figure out where do we need people in our industry. That's the really important part about CTE, is we want to make sure that our students are getting prepared for the workers that we need. We've heard about the skills gap and not having the employees to hire that have the right skills to match the jobs that we have in our industry now. So we look at that really closely. A big one of those for us was information technology. When I started, we had very few programs in that area. We now offer it at 4 of our 5 high schools. Eventually, we will get to that 5th one, but that's really exciting to get that program going and off the ground. Our programs have technical standards, so at the end of the year 2, they do take a technical skill assessment that's provided by ADE, and students can really show these are the skills that I've mastered. They get a certificate that says they've mastered that, and they're able to really talk about what are these skills that I am able to do now that I've taken this class or this program. We also have professional skills and work-based learning that are embedded in our programs, so we're working on interview skills, writing a resume. What does it look like to actually get that job and be in the workforce? So I love that part of the career and technical education. We really want to prepare students for that next step. And then last, we have career and technical student organizations. Those are the student organizations attached to each program, and I will talk a little bit more about those in detail in just a moment. So at your tables, I did hand out a list so you could see the programs that we do offer on our high school campuses. So we do currently offer 16 different programs at our 5 high schools. We are not currently online, but that is definitely a discussion that they're having about trying to bring some CTE programs to that online arena. 51% of our programs are hands-on, therefore it's very difficult to simulate our labs in an online environment. You'll notice on the handout, not all of our campuses offer every single program. And that is just based on the needs of that campus, maybe what we've added there recently, how the programs go together. So just making sure that there's a variety of options. And there's many factors that we look at when deciding to add a program or maybe sunset a program at a campus. So based on student interest, looking at enrollment, overall, is that program being successful? Am I seeing students complete that year too? That's really important to students getting a high quality program as well as for us to get our funding. And then staffing, of course, do we have someone that is highly qualified that can teach in this area? As you can imagine, finding teachers in nursing and engineering and information technology can be very, very challenging. As I mentioned, our programs, many of our programs do have industry certification. This has been a big push with our governor. There is an incentive grant, so we actually get funding back for students that do complete a 2-year program, graduate from high school, and earn an industry certification. So we're able to then turn those funds back into, we do support, we pay for students to be able to prep for these exams, and we pay for the cost of the exams. Some of them are very costly. So it's very nice to have that additional funding. I'm also able to use that money to help train our teachers. So for example, I just sent our information technology teachers to the Network Plus training. So they're able to see what it really takes to be able to prepare for and be successful on that exams. These are very high stakes exams. They are high level, stressful for many adults to do. So it was really nice for them to be able to go and to get that training themselves. The industry credentials or the certifications, again, go through a rigorous process to be on that list. Business leaders, community members, they're saying, do we actually recognize this certificate? Would we say if we saw that on a resume, hey, that's something I'm looking for? So these are certifications that are recognized within industry. So it's a nice way that they kind of do some checks and balances. So I just listed on the right-hand side there some of the credentials that we do offer. So in our biotechnology program, which is one of the classes that we offer on a block, for the lab, that is very, very helpful for students to be able to have those 2 hours to really engage and dig into the lab, talk about it, reflect on it. It's very difficult to do that in 48 minutes. So that double class period is really helpful. But the base exam, our students are very successful at the end of that program being able to earn that certificate, which would get them into an entry-level position working in a lab setting. We have a nursing program so students can earn their CNA or LNA. Again, both of those top two, I think, are really important for students considering healthcare. For any pathway, you do need to have hands-on patient care. If you want to go to medical school, if you want to be at PA, they're looking for what have you actually done in industry. It's not just your academics. You have to have practical skills that you can speak to, and they can get that in high school. We do the CompTIA. We have the fundamentals of IT, Network Plus and A Plus is what we are aiming for within our networking and cybersecurity program. We do OSHA 10 within our technical theater and our sports medicine programs. Pro Tools is part of our music and audio production course, CMAS, which is offered over at Arcadia. We do the Serve Safe food management within our hospitality and culinary programs. And then there's a variety of Adobe and Microsoft Office certifications that students can earn. And then the last one is in our engineering programs. So the SolidWorks is a CAD program that students that they will get certified showing that they have those skills. Many of our CTE programs, almost all, are offering dual enrollment. So we do work closely with Scottsdale Community College as we are building new programs and considering, we want to make sure that what our students are learning aligns with what the colleges and the universities are planning as well. So we do work closely with them. Students earn that college credit while they're in high school. It is important to know that those credits will transfer. I had a parent say, well, my student's not going to Scottsdale Community College. It will transfer to the public universities in Arizona. And then I would just encourage, if your student is looking out of state or at other universities, you always want to ask, how would these credits transfer? It's a good question to ask. In most cases, especially within CTE, they are elective credits. So they are credits that, if your student is going to stay on that pathway, will definitely help them to get some of that college work done while they're in high school. And then as part of our, each program is aligned to we have one state, the Arizona Thespians is a state organization, but the rest of them are national student organizations, and that is a critical component of each of our CTE programs. It is the co-curricular. Each program is aligned, and the ADE tells us which program goes with which CTSO. And it's just a way for students to have that leadership experience. They compete at the local level, and they can go on to state and even nationals. So they have their project, and they are able to go to some of those competitions. So just a really great way to get involved, to meet other students that are interested in their same pathway, and really make some of those connections. So great opportunities for leadership and networking, great resume builders for your students. And a lot of this we do in class, so it's not like they necessarily have to spend all of this time outside of school to be part of it. So that's a little bit about about our programs. We also are part of the East Valley Institute of Technology. They are the CTED that we are a part of, so EVIT. And there are another 30 programs at EVIT that our high school students have access to. EVIT is a state-of-the-art facility for CTE. What they have really done is that it's difficult for each high school, for example, to have an auto mechanics program, to have all of that equipment, to have a shop, to have the space, to have the teachers. So they have all of that really fancy and nice equipment and lab settings for students to be able to learn in that environment. So students typically will go to EVIT as juniors or seniors. It is a block class, so you'll either spend your morning or your afternoon at EVIT, and it does take some planning with your counselor to work through that schedule. A lot of times students will take maybe one summer course just to make sure that they aren't getting behind at all or that they can get all of their credits done. But it's a really great opportunity. They've done some renovations there. They've added some really unique programs. They have one of the only aviation programs in high schools across the nation, so it's really cool. Even their cosmetology program is aligned to ASU for business and health and wellness, so students are getting an AA degree almost completed while they're at EVIT and then ready to transfer. They have a great EMT program, so our students that complete sports medicine can go right into their EMT program. They've met those requirements. Again, EMT is another one of those hands-on, entry-level, get some experience for you to be able to speak to. So really great programs there at EVIT. And last, I would just say, as you're thinking about your student and what works for them, there's a lot of conversations and talking about pathways And we definitely have unique pathways or programs that are very scripted within our district, and those are great programs for some kids, but they may not be a fit for your student. So really just keeping an open mind to what success looks like for your student and what their interests really are. I think that is the beauty of a public school, is we have so many options and opportunities and ways for our kids to experience and learn who they are and what they want to be and what they want to do. Our goal is for them to be successful and happy, financially independent. I have 4 stepchildren on their own, right? So I just feel like CTE can really help students discover what they want to do, and just as importantly, what they don't want to do. They may get into a program, and I've seen it with our nursing program, and they're like, I have to do that, I have to touch that. I don't think so. We'd rather them learn that while they're in high school for free than waiting until their 3rd year of college, getting into a nursing program to say, yikes, that is not for me. So it's a great opportunity there. We have that very traditional high school experience, and so that is my big boast that we can say that we can offer that. And CTE is something that a lot of our charters and private schools don't offer because they don't get the funding. So it's a really great opportunity for all of our students. So I will take questions. Absolutely. So it's just typically a 1-period schedule or class on their schedule. As an elective, they do need 1 CTE or fine art credit to graduate. So these programs can count towards that 1 requirement. But definitely it fits in most students. I would say we have a lot of AP students and honor students. They're coming and taking our classes and really putting those academics to work and to use and seeing it come to life when they're designing, something in SolidWorks and printing it on a 3D printer. It's really cool for them to be able to see that. Yes. Our sports medicine program we have at all campuses is probably one of our biggest. Next to that is business. We have our Business 101, we have marketing, we have hospitality. So those are and have been very popular. We just started our networking program last year, networking and cybersecurity, in the pandemic. It was very challenging. So we just need to continue to get the word out and let people know that we have these programs, that they are very exciting. We've got rooms that are now set up with the computers that they take apart and put back together. They have their own little network that they get to work on. So we've been able to get those rooms really set up and going. So I hope to see the growth in those areas. That's really where our demand is in our workforce. EVIT we have about 250 students a year that go over to EVIT. We could certainly see some increase there. And then we've maintained about 2,500 students are in a CTE class or program in our high schools. Yes. We do provide transportation. It's early in the morning because it is a little bit far, but we do provide transportation to, yes, their main campus, and then they have another campus too. Yeah, so 2 campuses. Okay, to tour for they do have an open house January 29th, which is Saturday, but I know that's hard for our site, so a lot of them will just take them on their own. I know I've set that up for a few schools. Because you really have to see it and feel it for kids to understand and to see what it's all about. And once they're there, they want to stay. Any other questions I can answer? Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and share about our programs and opportunities here.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you so much, Erin. And all these slides will be included in our presentation that we put up on our website. So if you want to refer to anything, we'll have it there. Okay, up next, we just have a couple SPC Executive Board updates. First, we have our budget report with our treasurer, Jane Trapp.
Good morning. Really not much change since last month. We had a few more schools donate to SPC. We still have a few outstanding, so if you're curious about your school, you can reach me afterwards and I can let you know. We really encourage, I think we're in budget for everything, especially for the school, but we're like spread the word for individual donations. That's pretty much it. Anything? Any questions? No.
All right, thank you, Jane. So we have some upcoming events. The legislative preview, again with Save Our Schools Arizona, we'll have a speaker come to speak for an hour, and she can address as well just education funding in Arizona in general and the ins and outs of that and how that's determined by the legislature. And then this is at the end of the month on January 25th, so there'll be some more bills that have been presented as well. So she'll be able to address those, the ones that have to do with education. And then on January 27th, in the morning, we have an SBC PTA roundtable. So anyone involved in your school's parent organizations are welcome to come to that, and they just discuss a variety of topics and share ideas. And lastly, we have our Gifted Committee has an event on January 26th that will be at night here at Mojave Annex, and they have Dr. Laura Wingers. She is talking about addressing anxiety and ADHD in gifted learners using an integrative approach. So Dr. Wingers is very well known. She has a lot of experience in the education field, and she's a wonderful speaker. And with that, does any reps have any announcements they would like to make? No takers? Okay. That is it for this month. Next month, we have Lori Bird, the SUSD General Counsel, is our featured speaker. So we will send in our email, we'll send out a form if you have questions specifically for her. But that will be our February meeting. So thank you, everybody, for coming today.